Hey everyone, happy Monday. It is Tara Talmadge alongside Mike Irwin. Time for another edition of Ask Mike. And Mike, I wish we had a win to talk about, but I gotta say that was still an impressive game.
Yeah, it was, and we got to talk about some problems and negative things and opinions and stuff, but that's what we do on this show.
Of course, so let's get to it. It's our first question this week. It's from Hotlanta Hog, who wants to know, what's the deal with the Hogs defense? I thought they were supposed to be the strength of the team.
Well, it's 2 straight weeks where they've had problems that they haven't had before.
Yeah.
There have been some tackling issues. We all see that. I've noticed in some cases they're taking poor angles to the ball, like you almost run to a point in which by the time you get to the guy, he's already past you instead of going more to the left or right to where you meet him at the proper angle. And those things are correctable. I'm sure the coaches are looking at that and talking to them. But you've also had 2 straight opponents. And people think I'm making excuses. I'm just talking about reality. You've had 2 straight opponents that are very good at running and throwing. And anybody that's ever played football, I don't care what level, if you're on defense and you'll go up against a team that can run and throw, your head is spinning because you've got all kinds of responsibilities. In order to deal with the run, you need your linebackers and corners to come up and help. But then if they can throw it, and that's the problem Arkansas ran into. There were times they said, well, you bit on the run. Well, you have to bite on it at times. They were hurting you on the ground. So you kind of make a move up because you think that's what they're going to do, and then the next thing you know, one of those wide receivers is run right by your cornerback, and they throw a bomb on you. But then if you've got everybody back in coverage, including the linebackers, you hesitate for a couple of seconds, and that gives them enough time to pull off a 7, 8, 9-yard run. So a lot of that was just the fact that both of those teams are very good at doing both. The good news is I don't see anybody else that's that good at both. Auburn's pretty good at it, but they're not as good as those 2 teams. And if there's good news that came out of this weekend, it was the emergence of KJ Jefferson as the true leader of the offense. He's the guy that's come farther than anybody to me. I said on the show before the season started, that was going to be the big problem this year, is trying to develop him. Well, he's done great, and he really responded this week, and I felt like he became a complete quarterback. Now, I put that on Twitter, and some guy popped off and said, well, he's throwing passes too high, so he's not complete. Nobody throws a pass accurately every time.
Yeah.
He was not consistently throwing the ball high. There were a couple of times when he did it, but there were also some times, like on that 2-point conversion, when he had to throw it high.
Yeah, he's hoping someone could make a play on it.
Yeah, so I don't think he's got a real issue with throwing it too high, and I think he's really just come around as a guy that can do both. He can run and throw. We've seen him burn people with deep balls. He's done it consistently enough, and his numbers in that game were better than this Heisman Trophy candidate guy that they kept talking about. He almost had as much rushing yards, but he had better passing numbers. And he's only been the starter now for 6 games. Matt Corral had all of last year, and going into this year to improve as a quarterback, Jefferson's still got a lot of games ahead of him, including all of next year. So if you project ahead even this year, I think it looks good. And then next year, what's he going to be like? He could be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and this Cam Newton thing could actually be accurate.
It could be, yeah. And I mean, I got to say, it was impressive to watch him. Actually, he got off to a good start, which I feel like you compared him to a lawnmower once. You know, sometimes you got to just crank him up, get him going, but that wasn't really the case.
No, this was his best game as a Razorback, and look at what he did. You throw a touchdown pass with 1 second left on the clock. I mean, come on.
Awesome.
That was not a 2-minute drill there at the end. It was about a 1.5-minute drill.
Yeah, it really
and he took him right down the field. And look, you know he's a good quarterback because go back and look at that game. Lane Kiffin is over there going, ooh, he's got praying. He's scared.
He's nervous.
He's scared to death. KJ has him all messed up.
Which I'm sure all Razorback fans love to see that from Lane Kiffin
I
as well.
did. I enjoyed it.
All right, our next question is from Blood Red Hog, who asks, do you agree with the decision to go for 2 and the play that Kendall called? I agreed with the call, but felt a run or draw for KJ was the better play call than a pass.
First of all, there was an option to run there. You just didn't see it. Here's what happened. When Arkansas lined up after that touchdown pass and started to go with the 2-point conversion, Lane Kiffin immediately called timeout. Now, I don't know if some of their guys in the booth already saw what they thought might be happening, but KJ said in the post-game press conference they did an alignment we didn't expect.
Right.
And that alignment issue was you had a defensive tackle, which would be on the left side of their defense, the right side of Arkansas's offense, and he was uncovered. He was not blocked because Arkansas's offensive tackle on that side went back and tried to block a linebacker. He didn't block him. But that left this defensive tackle to come straight across the line of scrimmage. KJ was supposed to take the ball, take it out to the corner, and then look and see if he could run it in, and if not, throw it. And indeed, A.J. Green, who did a crossing route, a down and out on the goal line, was open right there at the goal line. The problem was that defensive tackle got in KJ's face so fast that the run option wasn't there.
Yeah.
And even the pass to Green would have been iffy because he'd had to throw it like this, and the guy was coming this way, so he still might have batted it away.
Yeah.
KJ felt his only option was to back up and throw it, and that's why that ball went high, because he had to throw it over the guy's arm, which was stretched out like this. So really, I like the decision to go for it. I can't say the play was a poor play to call. I think it just got blown up because
Absolutely.
they may have seen something, or they may have gotten lucky. They may have just decided to align that way, and it happened to work. It was a guess.
I agree with you, though. I do think it was the best decision for them to go for it on 2.
Right.
All right, Twinkie275 wants to know, excluding the Bama game, to you, how does the remaining season look like for the Hogs? Any particular bowl game, you think?
Well, I think they've got at least a chance to finish third in the West. A lot of that depends on what Ole Miss does.
Yeah.
Ole Miss, they've still got to play A&M. That game is at Oxford, so I still think A&M may win, or Ole Miss may win that game. But even if Ole Miss were to finish second, if Arkansas finishes third, I think you see Ole Miss maybe going to one of the bowl games on the east side, and I think Arkansas would be a logical pick to go to the Cotton Bowl. If they were to win out, but just end up edged out by Ole Miss for second place, I think that's what would happen. Now, if Arkansas starts losing some more games, then you're going back to the Liberty Bowl, which no one wants, or there's 2 or 3 other lesser bowls, but I think they need to think Cotton Bowl. That would be a fun trip.
You think they win out?
I don't know, but I don't think they have to.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I think they could still lose to Alabama, finish third in the West, and still go to the Cotton Bowl.
Okay.
And I don't know about the fans, but for the media,
that'd be fun.
if you've never been to the Cotton Bowl, I'm telling you, I've been to almost all the bowls that Arkansas can go to, because there's some that they're never going to be invited to, like the Sugar Bowl or the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
But the Cotton Bowl is the best bowl for media. You have to be there to understand what it is. They feed you better. They treat you better. There is more cool stuff going on. They have a hotel that's just got a big recreation room with all kinds of stuff going
I
on.
love this.
They got foosball in there and computer games and
So
all
now
kinds of stuff. And the food is just fabulous. 3 times a day. They got these little guys in these checkered waiters outfit.
Yeah.
And that hotel is a high-dollar hotel. And for 1 week, the media comes in, and we're a bunch of goobers, we're not used to that. And so you come in there, and you can tell that these waiters are used to dealing. People have a lot of money, and they're disapproving of the people they're having to deal with because they're looking at how sloppy they are and the way they eat and all this. He's not eating his salad with the right fork and this stuff. It's really funny, but it's really good.
You got me pulling for the Cotton Bowl now.
Oh, it's great.
All right, John Harris says, I have an idea that our tight ends are going to play a big part moving forward this week. Do you anticipate Trey Knox creating mismatches at the position?
He had a good game. What did he catch? I don't know. I have it here somewhere. 5 catches. I wrote it down somewhere.
37 yards.
37 yards, yeah. That was an experiment this week. They got problems there, and they knew it, and they felt like, okay, he's not really getting into the mix at wide receiver. He's got the height. He doesn't have the weight yet, but let's see if he can get in there and make some catches. Now, it was successful enough that Sam Pittman said after the game, he's there now. We're not going to move him.
Okay.
And he's got at least next year, and if he decides to do a COVID year, he could have 2 more years. the main thing they're going to try to do when the season is over is beef him up so he can be a better blocker. Well, you got an entire off season to do that, maybe another off season after do. Who knows? This guy might end up in the NFL as a tight end. So you get him up to about 250. He's around 220 now, 250, 260, and he's with his height at 6'5". I think he'd be a good tight end. So that could be a good thing that came out of this football game this week.
Yeah, so maybe not right now with the mismatches, but he absolutely could eventually. Pork Soda has a hoops question for you, Mike. What is your take on men's basketball recruiting? Is it just a result of an exceptionally talented class from the state of Arkansas, or do you think Musselman will continue to recruit at this level?
Here's the thing that Eric Musselman has done first and foremost. Remember all those recruiting problems Arkansas had in state? We know, anybody that follows basketball, anybody talk to Kevin McPherson, who's done this for a long time, our basketball recruiting guru. Arkansas has really good high school basketball players.
Yeah.
A lot of them come through AAU programs, but they've got some good players that stay in their respective high schools. So you can have a really good recruiting year just recruiting in-state talent. He just got through getting a commitment from a 5-star in-state kid.
It's pretty big.
But he's also gone other places. He's still in the mix for a 5-star kid out of Texas. So you get him, you've landed 2 5-stars right there, and he's already in the top 5 in recruiting right now. If he does that, he might jump up top 2 or 3. And then the thing you always have to take into consideration with Eric Musselman is that he does such a good job in the portal. He's the best portal guy.
Without a doubt.
That's his thing, like, you know, when Kentucky started doing all this stuff where they were getting the one and dones and everybody was mad because they could convince all these one and dones. You know, I'm the guy that can get you to the NFL. NBA, I expect you to come in 1 year and I'll get you ready and there won't be any pressure on you to stay an extra year. And so he had that going. Well, Musselman's got the whole portal thing going. You come here and we not only will make you better, and we not only will get you ready for the NBA, we will put you on a championship team, a team that has a chance to go to the Final Four or whatever.
Wow.
So his recruiting is very good. High school recruiting is good, but his portal management and bringing in guys in the portal, that's been fabulous so far.
Isn't it crazy what he's been able to do with that team just in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, it's just nuts.
And people thought he couldn't recruit at the college level.
There were people telling me that when he was still under consideration. There were some desperate boosters who wanted Chris Beard, or they wanted a guy, what's his name, at Wichita State, Marshall. They were just telling me, oh, you don't want this guy, he's this and he's that. Of course, I didn't know much about him at the time, but they certainly turned out to be wrong.
No kidding. I'm sure Musselman got a good laugh out of that too. All right, Lanny wants to know, what did you think about the decision to bring in Hornsby late in the second quarter with the game tied? He put the offense in a 2nd and 16 hole.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily like it, but it didn't really hurt him because Jefferson came back in and they overcame that 2nd and 16 and got all the way down around the 30. And then I think they had a short run, threw a pass, and then had another run, and it was 3rd and 7 or something like that. So they tried the field goal, and the field goal was no good. I don't think that had anything to do with Hornsby.
No.
Now, this idea of bringing Hornsby in to do that sort of thing, I don't know. I don't like it. Here's the problem I've had with Hornsby all along. They keep talking about his track speed. He was on the fastest 4x100 relay team in the country his senior year. Okay, he's got track speed. That doesn't necessarily translate to football speed, because track speed only helps you as a football player when there's a clear lane and you can just shoot through it and go. And he doesn't get that very often. He's shown off his track speed 1 or 2 times, but more often than not, like on that play where he lost 6 yards, he's trying to move laterally and he can't make it to the corner. So he can't turn upfield and use that speed. If he ends up being Arkansas's next quarterback after Jefferson leaves, he's got to get bigger, because a big part of what Jefferson does is not just running ability, it's physicality.
It's hard to take down.
So he's going to have to become more physical. I think he's going to have to become more of a runner that spots a hole and goes through that hole rather than just, I'm going to get to the corner, I'm going to do that. He's got to be a little more savvy as a runner, but the main thing he's going to have to do is become a better passer. because when you can throw the ball, that then opens up gaps for you to run through where you
Yeah.
can use that track speed. I'm not saying he can't be that guy, because if you'd asked me last year, early in the season, if what Jefferson was going to do this year, I would have been probably pretty skeptical.
Yeah.
So I'm skeptical about Hornsby right now, but that doesn't mean he can't develop. That's why you have
Yeah.
quarterback coaches.
I'm just not a fan of pulling him in just out of nowhere.
Well,
or
Kendall
running like a
Briles
goal line
likes to do that
package.
sort of
I'm
thing.
just-
We know that.
I know.
He likes kind of trick plays or surprises or whatever. And we've seen enough of Malik being brought in last year to do that stuff. And there's two things that he keeps trying that don't work. That's one of them. And the other thing that doesn't work is Traylon Burks on an end around or lining up in the slot and coming around carrying the ball. He's a wide receiver. Let him be a wide
Let him do
receiver.
it.
Stop trying to make him be a running back.
All right, our next question is from Dr. Strangepork, who says, opposing teams now have almost 2 seasons worth of defensive game film on the Hogs. Surely they've planned and tracked tendencies and tells. What are the chances they tweak it with different fronts and blitzes going forward?
It's a really good question, and I don't know. I mean, you'd have to be in the mind of Barry Odom to know what he's going to do. Here's the problem that I didn't mention when we were talking about the defensive issues earlier. You've got this 3-man front that he basically stays with. Now, he does have the flexibility to go back and forth, but we've seen him mostly stay in a 3-man front. Well, what did K.J. Jefferson say when he was asked about why Arkansas ran so well on Ole Miss? He said they had a 3-man front. He called it a light box. We took advantage of their light box. Well, Arkansas has a light box a lot of times.
True.
So at some point, does Odom adjust by going with 4 down? If somebody's hurting you on the ground, do you go with 4 down linemen?
Maybe.
And try to deal with your pass coverage with who's left? And then here's the other part, and I got this from watching, which I still have a hard time believing, the A&M win over Alabama. If you had told me that A&M would wreak all kinds of havoc with Alabama's offense by blitzing multiple players, I'd say you're crazy. They'll just throw over your blitz.
Yeah.
But they didn't. And if your blitzing is creative, you can cause problems. For whatever reason, and we're now in the second year of watching Odom's defenses, he doesn't like to do that a lot.
Yeah.
He likes to rely on his 3 down lineman pass rush. Now, so the question is, will he change? And I can't answer that question. I would like to see some changes made, some adjustments, but I guess we'll see when they play Auburn this week if you see a few little tweaks there. And maybe they blitz more and maybe they go with 4 down linemen more.
Yeah. We'll just have to wait and see on that one, but good question right there. All right, Razorback Redneck says, Georgia shut us out, excuse me. Auburn put up 10 points on them and gave up 34 to our 37. What does that say about the Auburn game this week?
To me, it doesn't say anything other than Arkansas played Georgia at Georgia in front of 93,000 fans. And Auburn played Georgia at home. There's a huge difference. There's no way you can even quantify the difference in those two situations. So I wouldn't make that comparison. I wouldn't look at it and go, well, gee, I think Arkansas is going to have a lot of problems because, clearly Auburn played Georgia better than Arkansas did. It was just a totally different situation.
Well, also Georgia, like you've talked about before, was probably kind of
I think they were ticked
upset
off
about how everyone was talking about that matchup.
They were ticked off, and then do you get ticked off 2 weeks in a row? They had no particular reason to be ticked off at Auburn. I think after the way they played Arkansas, they went to the Auburn game, went on the road and went on the Auburn game, and I promise you that Kirby Smart's message to his players was, let's just go in and take care of the game. Let's just get the win. Be workmanlike. Don't have to get fired up. Just do your assignments. So again, there was just a really big difference in the way Auburn approached those 2 games. I'm sorry, the way Georgia approached those 2 games.
All right, Oklahog asks, having seen the Hogs for 6 games, evaluate the new coaches on Pittman's staff. Who is the most pleasant surprise? And who has had to endure the most to get a quality product on the field?
I had to think about this for a while, but I would go with Michael Shearer, the linebackers coach, as a surprise. And that's just for me. because I thought the linebackers performed well last year. I thought it was one of the strengths of the defense. Well, what we were told when the change was made there was, well, Sam Pittman wanted better recruiting. And I'm thinking, okay, but are you giving up coaching on the field for someone that's a better recruiter? So I kind of was a little bit wary
and he's really young,
or suspicious of this. Maybe you're going to get a better recruiter, but maybe the linebackers aren't as good. And the opposite has turned out to be true. The big thing I would give Scherer credit for is developing Hayden Henry, because he was just kind of an afterthought last year. And he has suddenly, by coming back his extra senior year, he has really become a major impact on this defense. He's very aggressive. He's got all kinds of thrown for loss plays. He does a good job in pass coverage. He's become a very good tackler. And I give Scherer credit for developing him in that respect. And now you've got 3 linebackers. I think Bumper Poole is better this year than he was last year. The only question is, for whatever reason, for the last couple of games, I just think there's I don't know, there's been a little bit of drop-off, you know, maybe with the guy you think is going to make all those tackles back there, you know. But we'll see. It maybe Morgan, you know, is just, you know, had a couple of bad games or whatever. But overall, I think the linebackers have improved this year. So I think that's the biggest surprise. Now, who stepped up? This is going to sound strange maybe, but I give credit to Dow Loggins, and here's why. He had no way of knowing coming in that Hudson Henry was going to get hurt. And that's been a big problem when you just have one of those guys back, Blake Curran, instead of Hudson Henry, and that's put a lot of pressure on Curran. And for whatever reason, he hasn't performed like he did a year ago. But I give Loggins credit for going in there and convincing them, let's move Trey Knox over here and see what he can do, and it paid off. And the other thing is, we know that Dow is an excellent recruiter because he's already signed. They've already got commitments from, not signed, but commitments from 2 really good 4-star tight ends. So I think that's the guy that's kind of overcome an issue and is dealing with it. So that's a strange question. I had to think about it a little bit, but those are the 2 coaches I would
both
pick.
good answers right there. All right. At Mousetown on Twitter says, my Hogs ran into another round of fake injuries in that Ole Miss game. It seems like some teams do this a lot, but you sure don't see Arkansas doing it. Can't they pass a rule against this garbage?
A rule would be tough. What would the rule be? What you could do is you could allow coaches to do a review on an injury. Because we've gone back and looked at some of these. Anytime you've got guys standing around between plays, there's a screenshot that's on Twitter of Arkansas's players standing there and they're getting lined up to go, and you see that Ole Miss think he's a defensive tackle, and he just looks around and then suddenly falls down.
Oh no.
and they're looking at him like, what's this all about?
It just makes no sense.
So if you had a review of that, if the opposing coach can, okay, let's do a video review on this guy and see if he really got hurt or if he just fell down. But the problem with that is, what if he just suddenly had a cramp?
And I mean,
and it happens.
That does happen.
So it's pretty hard to just say from looking at video that that's a fake injury. So the better way, and the only way I've ever known that you could deal with this, is to pass a rule that says if you leave the game due to an injury, you cannot come back during that possession. You have to wait for an exchange of possessions before you can come back in. The other team has to get the ball, and then you have to get the ball back, or whatever, whether you're on defense or whatever. You got to have a change of possession before you can come back out onto the field. That would make coaches think twice about staging these fake injuries, because if you got a good player out there, you don't want him to miss a whole series of downs. It might end up costing you a touchdown if you do that.
I can't remember which game it was last year, but that happened a lot in a game last year. And Pittman actually talked about it. He was like, we just don't play that way.
It's cheesy. It's just cheesy. And you should be embarrassed as a head coach if you allow your players to do that. Auburn used to do it under Malzahn. Clearly, Lane Kiffin doesn't have any issues with it. And I don't like it, but it's one of those things where unless you pass the rule I mentioned, I don't know what else you can do about it.
So, all right. Eddie Lynn has our next one for you, Mike, and says, I read on Twitter where you were poking fun at an Aggie fan who claimed that A&M was going to beat Alabama because the Tide was overconfident and then win the SEC West after Alabama falls apart for the rest of the season. Looks to me like he may have been right so far.
Okay, I didn't make fun of or poke fun at that Aggie because of that, even though that would seem unlikely a week ago.
Yeah.
What he said was, what was left out in the question was, he said that Jimbo Fisher, who he called the second best coach in the SEC, had this genius plan, developed this genius plan where he knew that he couldn't beat Alabama straight up. So what he had the plan was to do is, you're going to lose 2 games right before you play Alabama. Then Alabama would come in overconfident, and then you would take advantage of it. You would be better than they realized.
So he would lose the games on purpose?
Yes, and that's the part that's idiotic, that Jimbo Fisher. Now look, I don't dispute that losing those 2 games probably did cause Alabama to be overconfident.
Absolutely.
And it was probably worked in A&M's favor, but that's not what the guy said.
No.
He said they did it on purpose, and that's just completely stupid. Now, here's the other part of it. Is A&M going to go ahead and win the West? First of all, do we believe that Alabama's going to fall apart now? I don't. I wouldn't want to play them now. I don't think Arkansas's got a snowball's chance having to play them now or anybody else, because they're going to be mad.
Right.
So I don't see Alabama losing another game. It doesn't mean they won't, but I don't see it happening. And then even if that happened, you know, A&M's got to win the rest of their games, and they still have to go to Oxford and play Ole Miss. That's a game they could lose.
Yeah.
Ole Miss is very good. And it would be the aggiest thing ever to get all fired up, have 105,000 crazy Agbos running around going nuts in Kyle Field, and you go crazy and you pull off the upset of the decade, and nobody does that to Alabama. And so you do that, then you turn around the next week and do something stupid like lose to Missouri or something. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think them winning the West might be a bit of a stretch.
But again, what I was reacting to was his premise that Jimbo lost those games on purpose. There's nobody with a brain believes that's what happened.
No one's doing that. All right, Alex for Hogs 88 wants to know, what are your top 2 favorite memories against Auburn? Top 2.
Okay, these don't have anything to do with the games themselves, but just an experience at Auburn.
Okay.
Let's go to the 2012 season, which was the infamous John L. Smith year.
Okay.
A horrible year. Arkansas went to Auburn. They hadn't won a conference game yet, an SEC game yet, but Auburn hadn't won one either. And Arkansas was so far ahead of Auburn as we got into the 4th quarter that it was pretty clear Auburn wasn't going to win. Now, I'm up on the photo deck, and we need to get the camera and the tripod down to the Arkansas locker room as soon as possible so we can get everything set up to try and get some post-game reaction back too. Because this is a big deal. You're gonna beat Auburn. You're gonna get a road win when they hadn't been winning games, much less win a conference game. And somebody, Marty Houston, was supposed to come up and help me bring that stuff down, and he didn't show up. And I'm sitting there and I'm texting and come on, we got to go. I can leave now because they're going to win this game. And nobody showed up, so I had no choice but to take the camera and the tripod and start down. Now, at most football stadiums, you can take an elevator from the photo deck all the way down to the field level, so you've got some help.
Okay.
But at Jordan-Hare, the elevator only goes to the top of the lower section. So I knew as I came out of that elevator and started toward the aisle that leads down to the gate, I'm going to have to walk through the middle of these Auburn fans who are mad because their team has gotten beaten by Arkansas, which is a terrible team. So they're even more terrible than Arkansas. So their fans are going to be mad. And I'm wearing a Razorback, it was Razorback Nation back then. I'm wearing a Razorback Nation shirt that's red with white. I'm going to be clearly identifiable. And here I come through the middle of those people. And I was prepared to get harassed. Instead, I get about 4 steps down, and these 2 guys in their mid-20s, maybe, big guys, young guys, fans, jump up. One of them grabs my camera. Sir, let me help you with that. Another one grabs the tripod, and I'm thinking, what are they going to do? Are they going to throw this stuff down or something? Nope. But I have no choice to follow them down to the field. And we go down, and they open the gate, and they stand there, and because they can't go into the field, and they hand me the stuff, and I'm like, God, thank
That's so
you. You know?
nice.
And so I was just blown away by that. I remember thinking when I got back home, those two guys, I wish I knew them. They were clearly raised right. They had manners because they were clearly disappointed, but they were so nice.
That is not the way I saw that story going.
Yeah.
It's a nice turn of events.
Yeah, it was nice. And then 2 years later was the year that Bielema, it was Bielema's second year, and Arkansas was playing Auburn the first game of the year. It was a really rare season in which your first game is an SEC game and it's a road game. And again, Marty Houston and I went out there a week early and did a lot of stuff there, and people were nice to us that whole week. But then the rest of the Pig Trail Nation people came after that, and we went out on a Friday night to eat at a restaurant that had been recommended to all of us. It's a really good place. Well, it was, but the problem was everybody else has that idea, and when we got in there were no tables available. The maitre d' or whoever, the guy at the front, told us you can sit at the bar, but that's the only place where there's seats available. So we decided to do that. And there were some other clearly Auburn fans up there, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, this could not go, this might not go good. These guys could be drinking, they see who we are, and next thing you know, there's going to be problems or whatever. Instead, we had a terrific discussion that went on for over an hour with these guys, them asking us about Arkansas, us asking them questions about Auburn.
Yeah.
I asked them all kinds of questions about Auburn's traditions. What's up with the stupid eagle flying around? And they explained that whole thing. And, you know, how they used to play early games in Atlanta or home games in Atlanta, the way Arkansas played home games in Little Rock. And so we talk about all that kind of stuff. I ask them, why does Auburn run off coaches that win national champion? And they explain, you know, we get mad at our coaches if they don't win. We just get rid of them. We think we're going to get other coaches that are better. So we had a nice discussion, and then I was able to explain to them things about Arkansas that they had questions about. And so when we got back from that trip, I said to myself, you know, you can have a good experience or a bad experience just about anywhere you go around the SEC. You could have isolated examples. But overall, I think Auburn is the most accommodating place for visiting fans. Now, DJ will tell you it's Oxford because he was going crazy at how nice everybody was.
He did love it down there.
But the problem with Ole Miss is the students. The students are out of control. If you go on Facebook right now, you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff about Arkansas fans were leaving the game. And keep in mind, Ole Miss won. Ole Miss won the game. They say it was a female student threw a beer can with about half full of beer and hit this guy in the head, and then it went everywhere all over several other fans.
Wow.
And that's not something you're going to see at Auburn.
No.
And maybe it was just this isolated thing with this girl, but I've had problems with the students there before, especially the frat boys. So to me, Ole Miss may be friendly from the standpoint of the adult fans that are there, but I think they've got an on-campus problem with their students. Now, I've had people tell me, and I've read some of this stuff on Arkansas's own social media platforms, and they all say, hey, you know, we're not exactly good to people either. There have been a few incidents, but I haven't seen anything really over the top. There was this deal one time where some Auburn fan had a tiger on the top of his rear antenna of his car, and they set it on fire, or somebody set it on fire. So, yeah, that's not good.
No.
But I think for the most part, Arkansas fans treat visiting media or visiting fans okay. But to me, Auburn is the best. I've always felt like Tennessee is a fun place to go to.
Okay.
Never had a problem at Tennessee. Alyssa's going to hate me.
You're going to say Florida.
But Gainesville is a trash town. It really is. You're shocked when you go there. You think it's going to be Florida and beaches and all this stuff. And it looks like kind of a, I don't know, like a little redneck place in the middle of.
Yeah, that place was humid.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason I call it the swamp.
But everyone is friendly there. I've never had a problem there. So that's a good place to go. Now, LSU.
You've talked about
They're
LSU
adult
several
fans.
times.
Get turned over in a porta potty.
Yeah, not a good thing.
To an Arkansas fan one time.
Georgia was pretty nice. I have to say, like the people in Georgia and the people that were working the game in Georgia were some of the most kind people I've encountered.
We had a Razorback Nation camera run over by one of their fans one day. It was on the sidewalk. They were doing live shots. It was between live shots, so nobody was on the camera. And this guy just comes plowing through there and just runs right over it.
Jeez.
Destroyed it. So, yeah,
So you could
Baton Rouge is not a friendly place.
It's like you said, you could have good experiences and bad experiences pretty much, I guess, wherever you go.
Yeah,
It just
I
kind of
guess so.
depends. All right. That's going to wrap it up for Ask Mike this week. Everyone, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here next Monday.